Welcome to this episode of the Doug Sandquist Podcast. Where interested is interesting, and interesting people share their stories and build their biographies along the way. I'm your host, Doug Sandquist. I'm a dentist and a photographer, and now a podcast host. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Doug Sandquist, and on Facebook, Doug Sandquist Photo. And you can join our email list by going to DougSandquistPodcast.com. And you can find our podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and a few others out there. Overcast, I guess. And please subscribe and like and favorite our podcast on those platforms if you so desire. And today's guest is Dr. Jeff Lineberry. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going, Doug?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And as with all of our guests, I don't have a bio, and I have not read Jeff's bio. But I will tell you that I again, Jeff is a dentist, fellow dentist, and I have met him in a few courses around the country. And so I know him a little bit, but I really don't know where he comes from or what makes him tick. And that's the goal of this podcast, is to discover Jeff's real biography. You okay with that?
Absolutely. I'll lay it all out there, Doug. I'm just transparent.
All right, cool. Be as transparent as you choose to be. So to start, I have a list of 10 quick and easy starter questions. There are no maybes here. So these are yes or no, or pick one. The number one, first question, gummy bears or M&Ms?
Gummy bears.
All right. Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Hot or cold?
Hot.
Would you ever wear flip-flops to Disney World?
Absolutely.
You'd be kicked out of my family immediately. I'd make you pay your own way.
I promise you I wouldn't whine along the way. I promise you I won't whine.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, that's the only rule. If you whine with flip-flops on, you're off the team in my book. Are you an early riser or a night owl?
I am both, actually, but I get up early and I stay up late. That's kind of crazy. People go, I don't know how you do 5-6 hours of sleep all the time.
Yeah, well, you make it work. Cow or chicken?
Chicken.
Short hair or long hair?
Short hair.
Tattoos, yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay, cool. Coffee or tea?
Now, are you talking about, do I have tattoos or am I okay with tattoos?
I'm just saying tattoos, yay
I don't
or nay.
have tattoos, but I'm okay with tattoos.
Okay, all right. You can qualify that if you want, but I just asked yay or nay. So
Okay, that's fine.
yeah. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
And the bonus question is sauerkraut, love it or hate it?
Hate it. There you
I love
go.
the response to that one. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I go back to Alex. He didn't even know what it was. So at least you know what it is, So.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I know where it is.
So, Jeff, where were you born?
Born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So, I mean, I have been a North Carolinian from the time I was born until now. So, only time I spent much time outside the state, I lived a month in Montana when I did a rotation in my senior year of dental school, and that was it. So,
Wow. That's cool.
So,
like, was it Tobacco Road or something like that? Is that what they call like the college basketball world?
Yeah, that's college basketball world between Duke and Carolina. So, I went to dental school at Carolina and UNC Chapel Hill, and of course, their big rival is Duke, and or we call them Dukies, and Duke is up the road from them, and they call it Tobacco Road between the two. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what was your earliest childhood memory?
My earliest childhood memory. Wow. Let's see. Probably remember, I remember my kindergarten. I remember kindergarten very vividly. My very first day of kindergarten, my parents trying to take me out to the bus stop to drop me off at the bus stop at the end of my driveway, and literally hid up underneath my parents' bed and clung to the metal up underneath it and would not let go. And my mother took me to school kicking and screaming the whole way, and I cried, screamed bloody murder, and by the end of the day I came home, I was happy as a little lark. So
That was it, huh?
yeah,
Just
I
one
remember
day.
that very vividly. Yeah, I remember that very vividly.
I can
So
almost see Jeff hanging onto the bottom of the bed there, trying to
yeah,
like get the pride
I
away.
was clinging to the wire mesh. I mean, I was holding on for dear life. I was not coming out from underneath there. So,
But then was the bus? Did you make your mom take you to school every day after that, or did you get on the bus after that?
no, I got on the bus. I started getting on the bus after that. Yeah, it was a little scary to start off with, but after that, I was okay. The occasional times, I got out there and I missed the bus, and
Yeah,
someone would take me to school. But for the most part, I made it. So
it's funny you mentioned that because I have a 15-year-old son, and so when we first took him to pre-kindergarten, because when he was there, they had pre-kindergarten before kindergarten, and so we dropped him off at pre-kindergarten. He stood in the middle of the playground for what seemed like minutes, just bawling his eyes out.
yeah,
We left with him sitting in the middle of the playground, just standing there, like with tears streaming down of his. And he, like you, he got over it quickly, But it's an interesting. I wonder if he'll have that memory too. I'll have to ask him.
yeah, probably so. He'll probably remember that for a lifetime. So scars
So
him. He'll end up being some dysfunctional dentist like me.
I know, yeah, all messed up. So what were your summers like as a kid? What did you do for fun?
The thing is that most of the time, I mean, just hung out around the house. I mean, we did go to the beach. That's one of the blessings about North Carolina is that, I mean, we're close to the beach. And, one of the things is that we used to go to the beach probably about once a year. And then the other thing is that I enjoy the outdoors. And my dad, he liked to fish a lot. And so we would go to the little local ponds and things and fish. And that was most of our summer. I mean, we would go fishing, and we would have our one beach trip a year, and that was summer. So
That's cool. So when did you ever have a job as a kid?
the thing is that I started really early. I remember when I was just probably about waist high with my dad. I mean, I was out there when he would mow the grass, and I'd hold on the backside of the lawnmower. So, I mean, that was my first official job was, cutting the grass and maintaining some stuff around the house. And but then my dad, he worked a full-time job, and then he was also a part-time mechanic. And so then I would go with him to the garage, and I was basically kind of a good gopher. I mean, the guys would be up underneath the cars or up underneath the hoods, and they'd say, "Hey, I need a 9/16" wrench. I need this. I need that." I would go get it, and eventually it kind of escalated into, I was changing oil, changing brake pads, cleaning heads, taking motors apart, whatever I could get into. And then officially, when I turned 16, when I could officially kind of have a job, and I started driving, I started working for what used to be called Eckerd Drugs, and then Eckerd Drugs was bought out by Rite Aid, and then, of course, Rite Aid's been recently bought out by Walgreens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked as a stock person, cashier, you name it. If it needed to be done, I took care of it at the drugstore, and did that until I went off to college. So
Yeah. So your dad was a mechanic. Is that right?
part-time mechanic.
Part-time.
Part-time mechanic. He worked as a machinist. He worked in a factory.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad, he was one of 10 kids. Grew up on a tobacco farm in rural North Carolina, and he quit school when he was 8th grade to work on the farm.
Wow.
Which is not common back then. And
So he didn't even go to high school.
No, he didn't make it to high school. So he was fortunate to just work hard. I mean, he was a really good manual laborer, hard worker, but he had a lot of common sense. And so he was fortunate to land a job at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, which, everybody hates tobacco companies,
Yeah.
but, it provided a ways and means
Yeah.
for my family. So.
Yeah. So how growing up? So was college kind of, was it a big, was it, were you, were you impressed that you had to go to college, or how did that work out? Did you always know you were going to go to college, or?
No, actually, so my story with college is that it's quite interesting because literally I got into my high school senior year, and I was doing pretty good in school. I mean, I was National Honor Society and all this, and you know, literally some of my friends, they started talking about like, yeah, we're going to apply for college. I'm like, college? I'm like, really? Because, when I grew up in Winston-Salem, I mean, one of the big places that there was still, R.J. Reynolds, Nabisco. And I mean, you could get a very decent job there making, $40,000, $50,000 a year with full benefits, which,
at 20 years old or 18 years old is a lot of money.
Right. Exactly. So I never, really considered college a whole lot. And so when a couple of my close friends are like, well, we're applying to college. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, where are you going to school? And they're like, we're going to Western Carolina. I'm like, Western Carolina? I'm like, I never even heard of Western Carolina. And so, so I decided, kind of based off of that I was going to apply to college because some of my friends were going off to school. I'm like, well, maybe it's not a bad thing. I'll check into it. And so I applied to Western Carolina and applied to NC State. That's where my oldest son is actually at now. And interesting enough, probably about within 3 weeks of applying to Western Carolina, because of my academics, I received an academic scholarship. Wow. So it made it pretty easy at that point. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is easy.
I can go.
So I can go. So that's how I ended up. So I was actually the first person in my entire family on both my mom and dad's side to go to college.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
that's a good.
So I was first generation college person.
Yeah. Did your mom go to high school too, or no?
Mom ended up with a GED. So she got married when she was really young, which is not uncommon. She came up. She was one of 5 kids and grew up on a farm. Her dad worked in a furniture factory and in rural Southern Virginia, and so there again, just very country farm, a rural background kind of thing. So
that's cool. So how do you think? How do you think you ended up doing so well in school? Like, just because was that your own drive, or your friends around you, or? I mean, I'm sure your parents were intelligent, even though they didn't go to college. I mean, there's way more intelligence than just college intelligence.
Well, I think like that, I credit my dad. I mean, I think I credit my dad with a lot of my common sense that I have with things. I mean, I look at things from a very common, practical standpoint. And then, as far as, my mom, I mean, I think she was pretty sharp. I mean, when I had questions about things, she was the one I would go to about stuff. But, I mean, I guess that's kind of the long and short of it, so to speak, as far as,
there's just such there's such a stigma around people that don't go to college or high school. It's like, it doesn't really mean, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. I mean, it's, I just thinking back like 20 years ago, it was kind of a big deal if you didn't go, but.
Yeah, exactly. 25 years ago, I mean, realistically speaking, I mean, probably half my class graduating wasn't going to college. I mean, now it's like everybody goes. It's almost kind of like an extension of high school. But, back then, I mean, it was just like, oh, you're going to college. Oh, wow. Well, really? Oh, wow.
I would say 25, 30 years ago, I mean, a lot of those small towns and rural, well, even where I live, I mean, you could easily get out of college and make $40,000, $50,000 a year and with benefits and do that for the rest of your life,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, factory workers were, in demand then. And, of course, now we're seeing a swing the other way. I mean, everybody's gone to college and there's no people there for trades. And so it's just like, I've got a patient telling me, he's like, yeah, I've got bulldozer operators right now that's making 6 figures. And I'm like, really? I'll drive a bulldozer.
I know. Can you teach me how to drive a bulldozer? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting how we've kind of, it's kind of the pendulum swinging. It's swinging back the other way, I think. I mean, like, so how did you decide on becoming a dentist? What was that path?
So yeah, that's another interesting story. I mean, I've got lots of stories. So I don't know how long you want to do with the podcast. But, when like I said, I was struggled with even going off to college, and so when I got to college, I mean, I'll never forget. I went down to this is before all the online booking and stuff, and so it's like you go down to this big center, and it's like long lines. You stand in it, and it's like, okay, they're like, so what's your major? And I go, I like biology. I think I'll do biology. And they go, okay, well, what's your emphasis area? And I mean, what do you mean emphasis area? I mean, biology. I mean, that's what I want to do. And they're like, no, or do you want to be pre-professional? Do you want to do education? Do you want to do, whatever it is? And I'm like, okay, I didn't know that there was so many different avenues. And so I'm like, yeah, pre-professional sounds good. Yeah, I think I'll do pre-professional. I said, in fact, I'll do pre-med, because that sounds really prestigious. I think I'll be a doctor, a real doctor. And so funny thing is that my best friend, who also went off to college at the same time, he unfortunately, his first year he flunked out after majoring in party and trout fishing. But when we were in school together, he was a biology major as well, and he was pre-dental. And so we used to go back and forth. And I used to tell him, I'm like, I'm going to be a real doctor. And so we kind of carried on a lot. And then, of course, he flunked out after that first year. And so for the next couple of years, I was in the pre-med program, and we had our pre-professional meetings, and we met with doctors and other things. They would come in and talk to us, and I saw it just consistently. Most of them were just burned out, and they just weren't happy with what they were doing. I'm like, I don't know that I want to do that for a living. And so I was talking to my friend, who had already flunked out, and he actually moved back to home, and he was working in a factory. And he goes, why don't you go dental? I'm like, dental? I don't know. I said, I never really thought about dentistry. I said, so actually, I mean, I started looking into it like my beginning of my senior year, and that's kind of what set the stage, so to speak, believe it or not. And so the more I kind of looked into dentistry, that's kind of what led me down that path. So, but the interesting story about that is that the same guy that flunked out, 10 years later, we're on a trip, and we're late evening having a nice cold drink, and we're sitting there talking, solving the world's problems, so to speak. And he'd worked his way up into a managerial position in his factory position, but he was burned out, and he hated what he did. And I said, well, you always wanted to be a dentist. I said, why don't you go back to school and become a dentist? And he goes, I can't do that. He said, by the time I get out of school, I'll be 40 years old, Jeff. And I said, well, do you want to spend the next 30 years of your life doing what you hated, or 20 years of your life of what you've always wanted to do? Mm-hmm. So long story short, he graduated dental school about 7 years ago.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah. I like that's good. That's amazing counsel. I mean, 30 years of your life doing something you hated, or 20 years doing something you love. I mean, I think there's something to that,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the thing is that so many times, I hear that time and time again. They're like, "Oh, I'm too old to do that," and I'm like, "Why? You're not never too old." I see that time and time again where people start their second career or third career or whatever career it is, and it's just like they may be 50, 60 years old, and they're just loving every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, that's cool. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason that. I mean, I remember there was a girl in my class. She was 50 when she started dental school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I had a guy in my class, Bill. I'll never forget Bill. Bill was probably in his 40s or early 50s, and he was an architect. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, why are you in dental school? And he's like, well, just wanted to do something different. This is kind of what I really wanted to do. So,
Yeah,
But
it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift. I mean, I was in my early 20s in dental school, so I had a hard time fathoming trying to come back and do all that later in life. But
yeah,
people do it all the time.
yeah, absolutely.
So you got out of, you graduated from college, then went to dental school at North Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, I had a year hiatus. So the thing is that applied to dental school, got an interview, and unfortunately, Carolina was very notorious for kind of their slow response. And so, literally, I guess it was March or something like that. I'm like, I haven't heard anything from them. I'm like, shouldn't I have heard something from now? And so I contacted them. They're like, oh, no, we've already made our selections and we're sending out rejection letters this week. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I better get a job. So actually next year I went to work where had been working. I actually worked at RJ Reynolds. They actually have a research and development division, and that's where I worked during my summers. And so I went to work there, working in their environmental and molecular toxicology lab. And so I worked there.
What kind of stuff do you do in a molecular science lab for RJ Reynolds? Like what stuff are they doing there?
Well, what's interesting is that we did a lot of comparative stuff. I mean, at that time they were looking at, believe it or not, they were looking at different types of smokeless cigarettes, so to speak, at that time. And so you compare and contrast, basically consumable products. I mean, what people don't realize is that cigarettes are no different than, food as far as a consumable product. I mean, and one of the things we would test is just, overall mutagenic mutagenic properties, and how carcinogenic some things are. And it's kind of quite actually eye-opening when you see some of the food additives and stuff that they use on a regular basis. Can grow some tumors on backs of lab rats really, really readily. So it makes you really open your eyes up to food and just the consumable industry as a whole, so to speak. But
yeah, and how, I know, and this is an interesting tangent for Doug's podcast, but it's interesting how, I mean, a food additive is really something that they put into food is really no different than what they would put into a cigarette.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, whether they add something there or, either way, it's in a product. It's a product that we consume, whether we smoke it or inhale it or eat it or whatever, and drink it, whatever it may be. I mean, it's in there. So we take it in through the body. I mean, so we ingest it in some shape, fashion, or form, whether we drink it, smoke it,
do whatever,
eat it, whatever. And, if it creates, it's carcinogenic, then it's, and it grows tumors on the backs of lab rats, and it's probably not very healthy for you. But yet there's a lot of products out there that will do that. So
and you don't ever hear about those, right? I mean,
no, you don't. Actually,
no.
you don't. And, everybody hears about all the bad things about tobacco, but I could tell you that there's some food additives out there that will grow up faster than tobacco. So
that's encouraging. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, but we won't get into the whole the products of that. But yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience.
So you did. So you did that. So you did. So you're out of school, then you went to dental school, and then you did. What was your first job out of college? Out of dental school? Where'd you go after that?
So before I went off to dental school, so during that year of hiatus, that was one of my things that kind of kept me from going to dental school. Was they were like, well, because I'd been so focused on pre-med, they're like, you really need to get some more dental experience. And I said, okay, well, that's what I'll do. And so I actually got to meet a good friend of mine that we're still good friends now, Keith Phillips, who was a dentist in Winston-Salem. He's also been affiliated with Pankey Institute. He's now actually on full-time staff at Chapel Hill Dental School. And so me and Keith did some early morning hours. And so I would go over there a couple of times a week. And that's kind of where I got my exposure for dentistry during that year that I was off. And me and Keith stayed in touch during dental school. And he goes, he says, I've got a place here for you. If you want to come to work for me. So you're welcome to come back. And so that's what me and actually another friend of mine that had known Keith for some time, we came back and we went to work for Keith as associates. So I started in June of 2000. And so I was there full time. And then in April of 2001, basically less than a year later, that's when I bought a private practice in a little small mountain town called Boone, North Carolina. The dentist had passed away of a massive heart attack. And so I went up there, bought the practice, and I went into full-time restorative practice at that point. So
how far away was that from where you were?
So that was about an hour and a half away. So, so when that happened, Keith that I was working with, he was so interconnected with all the different dentists in different areas. He's like, dentist passed away. And of course, everybody tries to pitch in and help out. He's like, your schedule's a little bit light, so let's condense your schedule. You can take off Thursday, you can go up there and work. And, and he would take a day off here. And, everybody was trying to take days off to try to help keep the practice going. And, I saw the tremendous need that was up there. And so the practice, of course, was for sale. And I had never even lived in the area, knew anything about the area. I mean, honestly, I don't even remember the last time I'd been to the area, but I went to undergrad at Western, which was a different part of the mountains, but I was like, well, it can't be too bad. And at that time when me and my wife were married, back then we looked at the area, but, we were like, well, it's a good option. And so, interesting enough, I mean, we put an offer in on the practice, and somebody else come in and they made a higher offer. And my friend Keith, he's like, Jeff, he said, it is not worth it. And you just need to find something else. So I kind of resolved myself to staying in Winston, and we bought a house and moved. This all kind of happened literally in December. I think that practice kind of came available in November or something like that. And then we made that decision in December. And then our first child was born 1st of February. And then literally, I guess it was around, January, February, is right around the time my son was born. We were sitting in Keith's office one morning and we get a phone call, and it's the people from Boone, and they go, well, this other deal that we had put together has fell through. And if he is willing to make the same offer that he did before, we're willing to accept it. And so all of a sudden, literally, here I went from, situated, bought a house, got situated with a newborn son, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to move to Boone. So that's what we did.
So you moved to Boone, and you were there for how long?
So I was in Boone from 2001 till 2013. Basically I took over that practice, and, one of the reasons why I was so busy when I found out was the reason why people were showing up there and like, yeah, I drove 2 hours to get here, Doc. And I was like, man, these people really need a dentist up here. And come to find out, there was about probably 60-70% of the practice was Medicaid. So people were literally driving 2 hours plus to get there because there was no other Medicaid dentist in the area. And so I took the practice and I basically just completely renovated the inside of the office, and just focused on becoming a full-time restorative, complex restorative dentistry. I mean, we did full fee for service, and things kind of grew, and I mean, I stayed very focused, and started going to Pankey in 2002, and kind of focused my whole practice on being full-time restorative, complex stuff. And then in 2007 I did a build out, and basically expanded into 6 operatories, and everything was going great. And then of course That's when the economy crashed, and actually didn't hit us until 2010. 2009 was actually my best year ever.
Right.
And
2008 for me.
Yeah. Smaller markets kind of got hit a little later.
Yeah.
Everybody else was complaining. I was listening to the news going, the recession. I'm like, what recession?
Yeah.
I'm like growing like crazy, having the best year I ever had.
And then 2010 hit.
Yep, exactly. And then all of a sudden I had like a 26% drop in my practice, and it's just like all of a sudden all my more complex cases and bigger cases just disappeared like overnight. So it's just like, so we were up there, and then literally, and it was the same year in 2010, I had my 10-year reunion, and, realized that, part of the reason why the happiness was there and part of the reason why we enjoyed the area was the practice. And so when the practice wasn't thriving as much, we realized that this area is just not, it's a nice area. There's a lot of great people. I love the people up there. It's a nice little mountain town, but the winters were long and cold. Sometimes starting November would have snow, and it would stay white until, March or so. So 3 or 4 months of solid
winter
snow. Yep. And that kind of gets old after a while. So So
you moved back down to the Charlotte area, basically?
Yeah, flatter area. Yeah, so we had a lake, summer lake house down here at Lake Norman, and then so we really enjoyed this area down here, and so then we ended up selling the practice. Well, we put the practice on the market actually in 2010, which there again was the worst possible time ever. We put our house on the market at the worst possible time ever. And it took almost 3 years for it to sell. And so we finally, I sold it to husband and wife dentist. And then in 2013, we moved to the Lake Norman area, and literally got here, and there was like hardly anything on the market, because at that point, most people that were working, they were having to keep working because bottom line, the practices were down. So, and, because the retirement funds were down, it's like, well, hell, I'm not going to retire from dentistry. So they were still working.
Right.
And so, so the first thing I actually came across was a practice so I was working for a few friends in Charlotte. I was doing some fill-in work. And the first practice I came across was actually a dentist who owned the practice. He owned the practice. He actually was also involved with pizza franchise as well. And of course, when the market tanked, there was more money going out than coming in. So rather than fighting the battle, he literally packed up his family and left his house, his dental practice, the pizza business, everything, left it all behind, filed for bankruptcy.
Wow.
So I went in and I bought the practice building, and what was left of the most of the equipment and everything was intact. I bought it on the courthouse steps of a bankruptcy court.
Wow.
And, so I then spent the next 3 months going in there, a couple of months going in there, renovating everything. I painted everything and put down new flooring and got everything situated and ordered some supplies. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to start from scratch, and then I'll just build this baby up, and I'll keep working for some of my friends. And then about that time, my sales rep, he calls me and he goes, I got a dentist over here in Mooresville, and she's burned out, and she's just ready to get out. So I think she's going to sell a practice. And I'm like, well, that sounds good, because she's actually got patients.
Right.
So literally I bought the one practice in July, and then I brought the, which was just the shell bit, the building and the equipment, but no patients. And then I bought the other practice in November. So I started there in November 1st. So.
Did you move into her office, or did you bring them over into your shell? Did you bring her practice over to your place? What did you do?
No, I stayed there because my other place was on the other side of the lake. So they were literally about 40 minutes apart. So, but I was fortunate where I lived. I was literally right in the middle of it. So I was about 20, 25 minutes to one place and about 15, 20 minutes to the other place. So
right. That worked out. I think that's an interesting, I mean, a lot of dentists are afraid to move just because they have to start all over. There's this idea that as a dentist, you build up your practice over a number of years. And, I think it's becoming less so, but I mean, that it's difficult to, you build something up for 10 years, then all of a sudden you just sell it and then go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many people come up to me. I've told that story several times at Spear and other places, and I have so many people individually that's heard it. They come up to me and they go, "Man, that is a ballsy move. I wish I could do that." And I'm like, well, "Why can't you?" I'm like, the thing about it is that life is short. If that's what you want to do it. I mean, and don't look back. The thing is it easy? No. Is it time consuming, stressful? Yeah. But the thing about it is that I would much rather do that, be where I want to be, than be one of these people that sit around and talk about how miserable they hate this, or I hate living here, or I hate that. Whatever it is, that they're just so unhappy about where they're living at.
Yeah, and I think for so many people, it just becomes a financial thing. They just can't see themselves, starting over again, and they view it as starting over rather than just keeping going.
Right.
I mean, it's like, it doesn't mean you're starting over. It just means you're starting anew and somewhere different, right?
Yeah. And the thing about it is that, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, actually, I mean, from a dental standpoint, I mean, it can be lucrative. And what I mean by that is that, I mean, you can, if you know your business systems and you can develop your business systems and you put things in place, I mean, you can go in and take over an underproductive or performing practice, and one that's producing $500,000 a year, and take it to $1 million, and then you've built equity into that practice, and you can turn around in an area that's highly desirable and sell it for $750. I mean, so I mean, it's we pick about flipping houses. I mean, you could flip practices if that's what you really wanted to do. I mean, I don't know anybody that does it, but
right.
But I think it's fun.
No reason you couldn't.
Right. So really, from a financial standpoint, I mean, no. I mean, is it easy? No. Is it challenging? Yes. But can it be financially rewarding? Yes, it can be. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just fear that gets people, because I think, like in one of my earlier podcasts, I mean, dentists go to school to actually own their own business, but they learn nothing about owning their own business. In school.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So most of us have to go learn it at other places and figure out how to do it. And most people don't have the innate ability to just say, you know what, I'm going to go live the life I want to live, right? Which I think is an interesting. You've made that decision for yourself, which is pretty cool. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's the thing is that you're exactly right. I mean, you get out of school, you don't have any business savvy about things, and that was one of the things I kind of learned early on from Keith is that he said, he told me early on, he says, he says, all this stuff about dentistry, he said, it's really great. He said, but let me tell you, he says, if you go out of business, he says, you don't provide dentistry for anybody. So he says, you have to take care of your business first. He said, otherwise you can't provide care for anybody. So he's right. So
he's right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting, it's tough because we kind of all go into dentistry as an altruistic, we want to help people and we want to be there for people and we want to help people who are in need. But ultimately, if you can't be viable, then you're not helping anybody.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I mean, that was a tough one for me to kind of get over, because I mean, at some point it now becomes an issue of value and how much you value yourself and your own skills and all sorts of those things, which the different, I mean, sure, that would be tough going into a Medicaid office and then turning it into a fee-for-service office. So how did that go up in Boone? Like, how did, that had to be tough, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, the thing about it is I mean, there was a lot of resistance, but the nice thing about it is that, I guess there was already kind of the pre-mindset of, the new dentist coming in. And so people were expecting changes. And so it's just like, I saw some of them that were in the midst of care. I mean, obviously I took care of them, but then I was just like, I'm not going to be accepting this anymore. I'm sorry, but, we just can't see anymore, because they're, again, the type of practice that I was wanting to do, which was low volume, high quality practice, doesn't mesh with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so a lot of the patients over there that were especially Medicaid, they, were gone.
Keep any? Do you know? Do you know if you kept any?
There was a few Medicaids. What's interesting is that, like the old saying goes, I mean, sometimes people will afford what they're willing to pay, or what they buy. And so, I mean, I did have some, and there's some that, it's like one family that I remember, I mean, they were blind. And so I took care of them continually, but I can't tell you how many patients they referred to me, and good patients. So there was a lot of goodwill from a lot of those situations too.
Yeah,
so.
we all have those.
Yep.
So what was your greatest success? What's been your greatest
success
so far?
Man, I don't know about that. Being on your podcast.
I don't know. I would say buying a Medicaid practice in Boone, North Carolina sounds pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty,
Yeah.
You have a couple kids in college, which is also good too, right? You have one kid in college.
One kid in college. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of successes, I guess. I mean, I don't know that I can sit here and say, what's my greatest one? I mean, I don't know. That's a really kind of tough question. I would much rather kind of, keep that away from me and focus on somebody I helped or something like that. I think that would probably be my more bigger success. I mean, I think that's, being involved in education has probably been my biggest thing is seeing how I can help other people. I mean, to me, that's probably, I guess, one of my greatest successes, being able to impact other people.
Mm-hmm.
So
have you done that? Have you given back to the profession, basically?
Yeah, giving back to the profession. I mean, I think that's, I never really kind of thought about it until, I think when I first started kind of going out there at Spear Education, and then I guess, I don't know if it was Steve Radcliffe or somebody mentioned, you realize that, Jeff, if you impact one dentist's life, if you teach him or you change how he practices or does things, and he's got 1,000 patients, you realize that you potentially just impacted 1,000 lives. I'm like, wow, never really thought about that. So all of a sudden, if you impact 10 dentists, that could be 10,000 people that you indirectly impacted. So it's pretty huge when you start kind of thinking about it from that standpoint. I think that's really awesome opportunity.
Cool. So you mentor right now. You mentor at Spear Education, and you also mentor at Pankey. Is that right? Or do you mentor anywhere else?
No, pretty much there, Pankey and Spear. So that's my two.
Do you do any other consulting with other dentists or one-on-one stuff, or just mentor at those places?
I've got two different study clubs. They're affiliated with Spear Education. I help a lot of the people that are within the study club. I mean, on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I'll get texts and emails and pictures and things like that I can try to help. And sometimes questions about business decisions and things that they, should think about or consider. So, I mean, I guess that's probably as far as more on a, I guess, smaller basis as far as things that I do. So.
All right. Cool. What do you do for hobbies? What do you do for fun other than dentistry?
What do I, let's see, do podcast,
professional podcast guest.
I troll Spear Talk. No, I mean, most of the stuff I enjoy is that I enjoy going out on the lake. I'm a big outdoors person, so I mean, I love hunting and fishing and hiking and things like that, and just kind of getting out in the great outdoors kind of thing. So, I mean, I would just assume to be outside that I had to be anywhere. So
that's cool. Yeah. You have any regrets? Are you a guy that holds regrets? That has them?
Regrets about?
Yeah, I don't know. Life. Anything.
Life?
Anything. Yeah. Business.
Well,
life?
Let's see, man. I've got. Oh, man, where do I start? Hindsight's always 20/20, Doug. I mean,
right?
Come on.
I know.
So, Interesting thing is that when I was in dental school, I mean, one of my regrets is when I was in dental school, believe it or not, like my third, fourth year, I mean, spent a lot of time in the surgery clinic, and I enjoyed surgery and still do enjoy surgery, do a lot of surgery. And I did one of my surgical rotations there at the dental school, and I got to know all the the oral surgery residents and the oral surgery faculty. And, I just really quite enjoyed it. But, I mean, pretty much, I mean, the people that went into surgery school, I mean, they were the gunners. I mean, that's, them and ortho, I mean, that was the cream of the crop. Well, Jeff wasn't cream of the crop. I mean, I was in, I think we had 75 in our class, and I think I finished up like 52 or something like that. So I wasn't like the top, and, I considered applying. And in fact, I mean, I even had the chief of surgery. One day, we were down in surgery clinic, and of course, being that we were the low men on the totem pole, so to speak, the chief resident was like, one of you guys need to go take the chief surgeon. He's got to go to the airport. He said, somebody needs to take him. He says, Lineberry, you take him. I was like, oh man, I don't want to take him. I was like, he's the chief surgeon. He doesn't talk to anybody. All he does is walk around, talk to his little recorder, doing dictation and notes. And so literally, we're on the right way to the airport. And I mean, he changes his whole tune, starts talking to me. He says, "Sir, are you going to apply?" And he just starts asking me all these questions. I mean, he was just like completely all in for me applying to school or for the surgery program. And I'm like, I don't think I'd make it. And literally, I mean, it's like everybody was asking me, and then I just didn't feel like it was good enough. And then, actually they took one of the guys from my class, and that's what I heard for the next probably 3 or 4 months after they made their cuts is that Lineberry should have applied. And this is from all the people from surgery, because apparently
they liked you.
Yeah, they liked me, and they saw my surgical skills. I mean, I'll never forget one morning, the chief resident that I got to work with so much, and they had a GPR resident there, and they go, okay, he says, one of the other residents is working with a GPR guy, and he goes, I bet Lineberry have these set of thirds out before your guys does. And he goes, don't let me down, Lineberry. And I didn't, so I got them all out. And, it was just things like that I built a lot of relationships and confidence with those guys. And, like I said, I enjoyed it. So, yeah, there's a little regret there. I wished I had done that.
Gone to oral surgery school.
Yep.
Just to see if you could test yourself, see if you could done it.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I kind of learned something too. I mean, I've learned that along the way, and try to share that with other students is that, when people are thinking about doing different careers and looking at different professions and so on and so forth, I always encourage them to find somebody who is passionate about what they're doing, because unfortunately, I started talking to a lot of the oral surgeons that were coming in there that were doing, fill-in work, so to speak, for the school. And, all I ever heard is that, yeah, it's okay. It's pretty much bread and butters, taking out a bunch of wisdom teeth. And, it just sounded boring and mundane. I don't know if they were maybe burned out or whatever. And it's like, now I see some of these guys that I know that, do some of these more complex surgeries. And I'm like, damn, I didn't know I could do that. I mean, I didn't realize that was out there. And so I tell college students and other people that are looking at doing different careers, it's like, make sure that you find somebody if you're going to mentor them or, talk to them about a career, make sure that they're passionate about what they do and they love what they do.
Make sure they're enjoying it, because or if you feel like they're not enjoying it, go find somebody else who appears to, and then compare and contrast.
Yeah, exactly.
At the minimum.
Yeah. Well, when my dentist that I grew up seeing, I'll never forget when I was looking at going to dental school, and I went and met with him, and he goes, one of the first things he says, he says, I got a good friend who's a dermatologist and he seems to be happy. Have you looked at dermatology? That's what he asked me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even hardly talk to me about dentistry. Like, he was so
Burned out.
and he just was not passionate about what he did. And I was like, at least I saw through that. And then I met Keith, who was just so passionate, and he still is. He's a passionate educator, and he loves what he does. And he was just like, oh man, you can do this, you can do that. He just kind of changed the game. So
yeah, that's wise. Do you have fears? Do you have any things that you fear? Like any things like that?
Fears.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that not long ago, and my number one fear, Doug, is not being good enough. That's it. I'm not afraid of heights. I haven't done any skydiving yet, but I'd skydive in a heartbeat. I've done scuba diving. I've done some really crazy things, so to speak, at times in my life. And
what is good enough to you?
That's a great question. Good enough. This sounds like one of those Mary Osborne questions. Are you staying in the question here, Doug? Oh, you're starting to sound like my therapist. What is good enough, Jeff?
What is good enough? Yeah.
That's a good question, really. What is good enough? I guess where I feel like that my efforts meets the outcome, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably it. In other words, if my efforts don't meet my outcome, then I guess I'm a very outcome driven person.
Mm-hmm.
So when outcomes don't come where I want it, whether it's with my work or professionally or personally, whatever, then I take it personally. And in other words, yeah.
I think that's a fairly common trait among dentists. I think most of us it's easy for us to take whatever failure that is a multitude of ways. I mean, we can often take it personally too. Like we missed the diagnosis, or
right,
we didn't have the skills to actually pull it off, or we just worked a little bit harder or whatever. And I mean, I think it's difficult as dentists to navigate that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, I can kind of see that. What would your current self say to your young self?
Current self say to young self, let's see. Don't settle. There you go. Don't settle.
Okay. Do you feel like you settled?
I settled for some things, in life. Yeah. I mean, there's some things that I settled that I look back on and I'm like, and part of that just kind of comes from my past. I mean, lack of self-confidence, self-esteem, and things that I grew up in. So yeah, I mean, I settled on some things.
Yeah. It's interesting how you mentioned the self-confidence and stuff like that. Because I mean, just hearing from your first part of your story, I mean, if you had self-confidence, I mean, I can see how you would have self-confidence issues, being the first, kid in your family to go to college and then going to college. But there's a lot of like self-confidence that actually gets you there. I mean, you battled a lot of barriers that, you forged down trails that nobody had been up in your family,
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I can kind of see the self-confidence on both sides of that. I mean, like, should I be here? And then also like just the moxie to actually go and do it. I mean, there's a couple angles there, right? I mean, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's definitely some things that it's just like, I look back and it's like, man, I think when I got involved with academics and doing other things, I mean, there's certain things where I excelled at, then that's where I really focused. And yeah, I did, feel confident in some of those areas, but then other areas in life I wasn't overall. So
yeah. So, what's your greatest inspiration?
Greatest inspiration? Wow.
I mean, you could actually maybe not say the greatest. You could just say what inspires you. How about something like that?
What inspires me? Basically impacting others. I mean, that's really my huge inspirational thing. In other words, if I can do things to help impact and make things better for other people, I mean, I'm inspired to do that. In other words, if I can motivate people, if I can impact other people's lives, if I can help them do things differently, better, change the way they look at it, because I've had some days in my life where it's been very challenging and very difficult and some dark places at times. And if I can help lift people up out of that and kind of see that there's hope and give them a vision and grow and be driven, then I'm all for that. So yeah, I'm inspired to do that.
So yeah, mentorship is a big thing. Like giving back and mentoring people is a big deal for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I know you talked about Keith Phillips as one of your mentors. Do you have any other mentors like that you rely on heavily? Heavily is probably the wrong word, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I mean, obviously, I mean, I've met a lot of great people along the way. I mean, I think about Lineberry, Gary Wood, obviously Frank Spear. I've had Jay Reynolds at the AACD. I mean, so I've had a lot of mentors along the way that probably some of the more powerful things that they've done more than anything is that they believed in me. In other words, it's just like, oh yeah, you can do this. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, oh yeah, you can do this. And so, I mean, it's really powerful when you get people that are well respected in what they do and in education, and they look at you and they say, oh yeah, you're absolutely going to make a huge impact. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And it's just like, I want to look around and go, who? You talking about me?
Yeah.
Okay, is there somebody else? I'm like, I don't think you're talking about me.
Yeah, there's something really powerful about hearing somebody who you view as a mentor, or you view as a good educator. Like, it'll just pick you aside and say, you know what, you can do this. You're able to do this. And like they're kind of waiting for you to actually go do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost like it creates some sense of accountability, so to speak. And I mean, the thing about it is that I mean, I've always been willing to do the work. I mean, the thing is that somebody gives me the guidance and help, and some of this stuff, I mean, I've just had to try to fill out for my own. It's just like, it's like, okay, go do it. See what happens. One of the things I've found is people go, well, how'd you get published in this thing, or how'd you do that? And I'm like, honestly, I mean, it's just like making connections and knocking on a lot of doors. And then the other thing is that when people send you opportunities like, hey, you going to build a podcast with me? It's like, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And then, it's amazing. It's just like, I'll get, I mean, I've gotten like a couple of things this past week where people want me to do webinars and stuff. And it's just like, and of course they want it done like yesterday. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. But, it's like, well, this is my way of I call it sowing the seed, so to speak. In other words, it's, I'm a firm believer in, you have to work the fields, sow the seed, get all the weeds out, do all the work that you can to it. And, I'm a firm religious person. So, I feel like that when the time is right, God's going to bring the rain and, and then things are going to grow, so to speak.
Pop up. Yeah.
But you got to plant the seeds. You can't just sit over on the side going, I got this bag of seeds.
Right.
It's not raining yet, so there's no reason for me to go plant them. My field looks like your background picture. It looks like a desert, so there's really no reason for me to go plant these seeds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think just it's been fun sitting here for an hour and just getting to know your story a little bit more. And I think part of my my podcast shtick here is I have to like come up with a Doug's discovered biography of Jeff. And I think if I had to like come up with one, I mean, literally, it's basically just what you said just then. I mean, you pretty much wrapped it up for me already. It's like literally like you've worked hard, and you allowed yourself to go through the door when they opened up. And I mean, I think so many times people are afraid to actually walk through the door and and walk into opportunities. And I think your story is that, you had pretty much, there's, as a 12-year-old kid, there's no reason to believe that you would have been the kid, lecturing to 150 dentists now, 30 years later. I mean,
right.
No one would have actually pictured that as being your path, and that yet here you are, you're a dentist at the top of his field right now. And I think that's pretty cool. And it's basically because you worked hard and you walked through doors that people opened for you. And sometimes people don't want to walk through those doors because they're afraid of what's on the other side. And I think you have proven to lots of people that sometimes you have to walk through the door when it's opened.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I tell is, the words of encouragement I would tell people that listen in on this is that, there's going to be people that you're going to meet along the way, and they say, hey, if you'll do this, I'll help you with it. That's a door.
Mm-hmm.
And, seize that opportunity. And quite frankly, I mean, I've had some really great, powerful mentors that had said, hey, do this. And honestly, I've sometimes kind of annoyed the shit out of them a little bit. I don't know if I can say that on the thing, but basically, I mean, long story short, I mean, I've had to say, hey, you said you would help me with this, right? Hey, you said you were going to help me with it. And they're like, okay, yeah, I will. Send it to me. I'll help you with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, you have to be tenacious about some of these things as too.
Yeah, I mean, just because the door is open doesn't mean that there's no effort getting through the door.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes it might be cracked open. You have to squeeze your ass through it, but it's cracked there. So,
Yeah. As long as there's an opening there, you have to be willing to get yourself through it.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
So what sorts of things are in your future? What's keeping you looking forward, looking ahead? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next, after COVID and all this stuff? What's coming up?
Really, I mean, my biggest thing right now is just kind of focusing on, I guess seeing where I can kind of grow things as far as from a professional, personal kind of thing. Professionally, I'm trying to kind of make more inroads in my teaching and education, seeing what other opportunities and doors kind of open up, and keep beating on doors and seeing how opportunities come up. I'm going to keep writing and doing other things. From the office wise, I mean, I'm still kind of, that'll be interesting with the whole COVID-19 stuff. I mean, we're all going to have to bounce back from that. So I'm sure that'll kind of detract from some of my energy levels of focusing on that. And then, personally, I'm just kind of regrouping through some stuff. And, personally, I mean, I'm working toward I was going to do my half marathon last year. So that didn't work out. So that's going to happen this year, even if I had to do it virtually, because, there's not going to be one this year. I don't know.
You can't do it. You can't do it together.
That's right. So.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, I love your energy, and I love your desire to keep improving the various areas. I like how you separate the areas of your life. I think so many times we work so much on our career or so much on something else, and or not enough on our family or too much on our family. And I think there has to be a balance whatever we do.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I learned early on from Pinky. They talk about the balance of life kind of thing. But what I've learned is that there's no such thing as a balance. Right. You just have to recognize when things are out of balance. You got to shift things over and be okay with that.
Yeah, it's kind of
more
like an amoeba.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's basically it's just seasons of life. The thing about it is that when it's raining really hard outside, you can't work outside, so you got to work on the inside. And then when it's nice outside, you got to spend some time outside and put in that time and effort and energy there. So,
yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I mean, I don't want to. We could probably sit here. We probably could sit here and talk for another hour or two, but we'll put people to sleep if we do that, I think so.
Yeah.
But thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on, and it's good talking to you. Good sharing things with you. So hopefully,
hope to do it again someday.
Yeah, absolutely. So
cool. All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.